NuCedar shingles are designed to replicate the look of real traditional shingles. We have a patented brushing technique which will give each piece a different color and shading. Our product has a factory-coated finish by PBG. It is a waterborne acrylic urethane paint formulated with the solar reflective pigments for a long-lasting finish. Your NuCedar should be stored in the shade on a flat surface. Do not store in any location where the ambient temperatures may exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Some examples are on blacktop pavement or under a dark tarp.
When installing NuCedar shingles in colder temperatures, you want to do your best to try to store the shingles in a heated area. However, sometimes that's not available. So a lot of tricks of the trade that I see in the field are guys, when they get to the job site in the morning, will take a few boxes of the shingles, throw them in the front of their truck and turn the heat up as they get their scaffolding set up and their crews ready to go. When installing in colder temperatures, you may have to adjust the PSI on your gun to prevent cracking the shingles, but you can install NuCedar shingles all through the year and in freezing temperatures. If you leave the fill and flex on the job site and it freezes, it will not work correctly. Same thing goes for NuCedar's paint daubers. Do not leave these on the job site. If they freeze, they will not work correctly. When installing NuCedar's PVC shingles, all the same principles that you know about installing wood cedar shingles applies to this product. The first thing that we're going to do is make sure that we have a plumb straight wall with sheathing to fasten the product to, making sure that we're using an OSB or plywood. NuCedar cannot be installed on top of open framing. You also want to make sure that your wall is wrapped in accordance to local building codes with a weather-resistant barrier. So there's no specific weather-resistant barrier that's required for NuCedar. You can use a 30-pound felt, you can use a standard house wrap, or you could use a drainable house wrap. You cannot use a cedar breather because when you fasten the product, it will cause the butts of the shingles to kick out. So you want to make sure you're installing on top of a plumb straight surface. Once you have your surface prepped and ready to install, you can install your starter course, and what you want to do is rip your desired exposure on an 18-inch shingle, a 7-inch exposure. So you're going to use the top half of the shingle as your starter course and your bottom half of the shingles as your fill-ins when you get to the top of the wall. When ripping and cutting NuCedar, you can simply use standard woodworking tools such as a table saw or a chop saw. No need to use diamond tip blades or rasp the shingles and shave them down. To get the finest cuts, you can simply cut with standard woodworking tools to get the nicest edge on your shingles. And once you have your starter course up, you're ready to start installing your NuCedar shingles. NuCedar is installed very similar to a cedar equivalent, and all the same principles apply to this product. The real difference is going to be the placement of the fastener, but you're going to space your keyways 1/8 of an inch, and you're going to gap your keyways 1.25 inches. So now that we have our starter strip installed, we're ready to start installing our NuCedar shingles. NuCedar is sold by the quarter square, and there are 5 different widths to a box. So on our 18-inch shingle, we have a 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9-inch width, where the 13-inch shingles have a 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8-inch width. One of the most critical things you want to make sure you do when installing NuCedar PVC shingles is proper placement of the fastener. Your fastener should be a 1/2 inch up from your desired exposure. So on an 18-inch shingle at a 7-inch exposure at the greatest, you want to make sure your fasteners are at 7.5 inches all day. This is one of the most common mistakes seen in the field with NuCedar because cedar shingles are typically fastened 1 inch to 1.5 inches higher from the overlapping butt of the shingle above it. If that is done with NuCedar, you will find that your shingles butts are going to kick out and they're not going to hug the wall tight and correctly. And you want to make sure you're fastening with a stainless steel ring shank nail, 2 fasteners per shingle, or you can use a minimum 7/16 head on the crown for staples. If your shingle width exceeds 6 inches, you want to make sure you're adding an additional fastener in the middle. This is to ensure that you have a 200-mile-an-hour wind load rating, and also that the NuCedar shingles will hug the wall tightly. When laying out your wall for proper installation of NuCedar PVC shingles, you want to apply all the same principles you would to a cedar shingle. So You can space your keyways a minimum 1/8 of an inch. A lot of guys in the field will use a nail as a storyboard to keep that keyway consistent from one shingle to the next. Other guys will mill down a shingle and use that as a keyway storyboard in between. The other thing you want to make sure you do is properly offset your keyways by 1.25 inches. This will ensure that the water is properly diverted away from the sheathing underneath and allows for drainage plane away from the wall. Notice that Jain is using his nail as a guide for his keyways, and he also had milled a piece of PVC shingle to keep his fastening at exactly 7.5 inches. And a lot of folks in the field will use a blue chalk line to keep the shingles straight and at that same exposure. One of the nice things about using NuCedar shingles and fastening NuCedar shingles is it works up the wall just like a cedar equivalent, but it's a true maintenance-free product, so it is a caulkless system. And what's nice about it is you can butt your shingle right tight into a trim board. There's no need to caulk. What a lot of folks will do in the field is they'll backflash that shingle with some clear geosil or Lexan and work it right into the trim board. It is recommended, but not required, that you backflash the shingle with a clear bead of geosil or Lexan to prevent moisture from getting into that joint. Again, he's using the chalk line as his ledger to keep the shingles plumb and straight as he works them down the wall. No need to stage the shingles beforehand to get the desired quilting effect of NuCedar, because NuCedar shingles are like a snowflake, and with our patented rough sawing technology, each shingle will have its own unique characteristics, so it will keep a variegated look for many, many years to come. The critical thing is that he's offsetting his keyways 1.25 inches. One of the other things that you'll need on your job site when installing NuCedar shingles is Fill and Flex adhesive. Fill and Flex comes in a 300 milliliter tube and can fit into a caulk gun. You will only be applying the Fill and Flex in a dime-sized dollop, 1 inch in from the edges of the shingles and 1 inch up from the butts of the shingles. This is to prevent the Fill and Flex from oozing out onto the shingles below. The Fill and Flex is only applied in hotspot areas only in the first 4 courses. An example of hotspots would be roof lines, composite decks, metal flashing, or blacktops. If you're wondering exactly how much Fill and Flex you'll need for your shingle installation, you can measure up the hotspot areas. One 300 milliliter tube of Fill and Flex will adhere up to a full square of material, a square being 100 square feet. One of the unique things you can do with NuCedar shingles in the field is create a woven corner. This is the only composite shingle in the marketplace that you can do this with. To achieve that look, NuCedar is finished on the face, the edges, and the butts of the shingles. So, when achieving a woven corner look, you will have a factory edge on every other shingle. The other shingles are cut with a table saw to get a nice fine edge to apply the touch-up to. So you will stack every other shingle against one another to achieve a woven corner look going up the wall. One of the other desired looks of the NuCedar product is it can easily be swept or flared, and NuCedar shingles can easily be flexed to achieve this look. There is no need to back cut the shingle to achieve this look. If you have a very aggressive flare, you could apply a heat blanket or a heat gun to the shingles to get it to conform to the flare or sweep you have on the wall. It can also be used around radius walls by flexing and applying heat. The beautiful thing about PVC is that it has no memory. So once you get it to where you want it to go, it's there indefinitely. For every 24 boxes you will have on your job site, you will be supplied with a 4-ounce dauber kit of touch-up paint. The touch-up paint is only used for aesthetics on your NuCedar shingles. So anywhere the shingles might have a hammer scuff them or get damaged on the job site is where you're going to be applying the touch-up. Also, when doing a woven corner. Where the shingles are hidden, you can butt it right tight into a trim board. No need to touch that up because you're not seeing it. It's not going to cause the shingles to rot or delaminate in the field. For further knowledge of NuCedar shingle installations of woven corners or flare applications, please view our other installation videos on YouTube or our website, www.jainbuildingproducts.com.
To safely clean your NuCedar product, a mixture of warm water and mild detergent or a household cleaner should work great. To remove any mold or mildew, you can use a mild commercial mold or mildew remover. We do not recommend using a pressure washer. It could ruin the rough-on texture of your product. Now that you've installed your NuCedar shingles, you can enjoy your house with minimal maintenance for years to come. Visit our website at jainbuildingproducts.com for any more questions on the NuCedar product